Hello, everybody. I am Melissa McKay. I'm a developer advocate with JFrog, and I'm here at the DevOps Speakeasy at JFocus 2023, and I have the pleasure of being next to Dylan Beattie.
Hello.
I actually met you last year. I know we meet so many people at these conferences, it's hard to remember, but you did our keynote last year, so you were very hard to forget.
So the fun thing about, the interesting thing about doing something like that, because this JFocus last year was kind of my first time meeting, I think, any of these people. I think there were one or two other people. And it's really interesting when, the Java community is huge.
Yes.
And people who spend a lot of time in it are like, well, obviously we all know everybody. But then if you're not part of that community, you kind of have no idea it exists.
Right.
I'd never heard of JFocus. And I'm like, really? There's 2,000 people in Stockholm every year talking about Java? And so when Matthias said, we'd love to book you to do this, I literally told him, I was like, there's 2,000 people, and I think I know that guy.
Oh, wow.
From a JavaScript user group in London 4 years ago. So it was the whole, and of course, particularly when you're the opening keynote, everyone sees you.
Yes.
And so they all then recognize you, and you have no idea who any of them are.
That's
so
how it is being famous.
You get very good at, the smile and the nod, and you're like, within 30 seconds, maybe I'll have a clue as to who you are and where we met each other from. And it's like, hi, how are you? Yeah, how's it going? What are you working on? And which, I don't know, sometimes feels really kind of fake and superficial.
Yeah.
But, it greases the social gears, I guess.
Yes, and we all do the best we can.
Yeah.
I was telling someone earlier, I think it takes me meeting and engaging in conversation probably 2 or 3 times before I will
for me, there's definitely the people I remember are the ones I get a chance to interact with in a smaller group.
Yes.
If you get a thing, I love the speaker dinners they do, but it's like, hey, we're going to dinner with 75 people you've never met.
Right.
And you're not going to remember anything. But when you get like just a little group of you, like 5 or 6 people, and you get a table, like those kind of conversations, you remember who those people are.
Yes.
And then you're like, well, there's this many people. We've only got so many hours in the day. You can't catch them all. This ain't Pokemon.
I love that you said that because I play Pokemon, so I can totally understand. Yes, I love events like this. I love being able to speak with all of the different people, especially interacting with attendees.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very important for us because sometimes as speakers or you kind of get into this level where maybe you only talk with each other and then we kind of forget what the community is about and what they're concerned with. And it's so important to be able to talk to attendees and make sure that we're doing our job, right? That we're making sure that we're talking about the things that everyone is concerned about. We're educating what we need to educate on.
One of my favorite things that happens at these kinds of events is when, you do a presentation and at the end, any questions, and there's normally like 1 or 2 quick questions, but then somebody comes and finds you afterwards. And they're like, I have this, it's not an easy question, but it's like a real thing that my team is working on at the moment, and if you've got 5 minutes, I'd love to know what you think about it. And those kind of interactions, I find those so insightful because they give you, you get a much better sense of what other people are actually doing.
Right.
It's very easy, I think, to come to an event like, any of the big international conferences, and you come away from it going, well, obviously we're wrong, because everyone up there is talking about using the latest framework and the latest database and cloud and all this kind of stuff, and then you go back to work and, you're still on a 10-year-old version of Java, or you're still on .NET on Windows, or that one client who, fortunately, it's not Internet Explorer 6 anymore. But, we've all been there. The whole the things at the conference were nice, but we can't use that on my team.
Right.
Because we have to support local government, or we have to do this.
Exactly.
And so when you get a chance to chat to the attendees, you realize that there is this vast spectrum of the sort of the bleeding edge. And then, the sort of the mature bit where it's stuff been out a couple of years and it's getting some good kind of penetration into different sectors and things. But then a lot of the software that keeps the world ticking over, no one's talking about it on stage. They're talking about it over coffee and over beers afterwards.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly. It's those hallway conversations.
Yeah.
Those are the important
ones.
And
that I think is the thing I missed the most about the online events.
Yes.
Is the presentations were still great, and the organizers always worked really hard. But then when you go and get coffee, you do it by yourself in your own kitchen.
Right.
And you're not on Zoom and you're not on Slack, and it just that never happened. So.
Yes, I agree with you. That was the part that I missed the most as well. Well, one other thing I wanted to add to that. as far as like bleeding edge and stuff, I think talks just about fundamentals are so important too. Often I'll run into, maybe attendees that have just graduated from school, or they're junior developers on their team. And sometimes we forget when we get more experienced in our careers, we just assume that these things are already known, and we just move on to the next thing, and we forget to mentor those coming up after us.
I think it's really interesting to see, conferences, user groups, community events in the context of how do we take, somebody who was born when I started doing test-driven development is now a professional developer.
Right.
Because I'm old and I've been doing this a long time. And, I think those of us who've kind of figured it out, I've been on the web, I've been building websites since HTML1. Like I literally made my first web page in 1992 when nobody knew what the web was or why it was important. This was at a university work experience placement. So I've kind of grown up with the web. And so all this new stuff that comes out, it's like, oh, look, you can run script in a browser now, and you can choose JavaScript or VB script.
Right.
And then it's like, actually, JavaScript runs everywhere, so we'll use that one. And then, jQuery, CSS, CSS1, CSS2, CSS Grid, the first Google Web Toolkit, all this kind of stuff. And, I think to somebody who has grown up, with all that already exists. And this is the thing that I will never be able to relate to directly is I'm that generation where when I was a kid, nobody had email. And then, I got email when I got my first job, but literally everyone in the company got email the same week I got email because my job was giving people email who'd never had it before. I was going around and installing email clients on all their 486 PCs. So I don't know what it's like to grow up surrounded by the web and the internet and mobile devices, and then, when you're 10, 15, 20 years old, be like, I wonder how this works. Can I do this for a job? How do I, and I think this is somewhere where, mobile devices, I think that they've introduced a sort of distance, because with desktop computers particularly, even, modern web applications, right-click, inspect element, that's how it works.
Right.
But if your exposure to information systems is purely your experience using mobile and using tablet devices and these kinds of things, how do you do that, How do you take the cover off and start figuring out how it works?
Yeah.
And so that, I'm always really interested. Like, somebody, they're 15 years old, they're smart and they're curious. How do we get them from that to being somebody who is a well-rounded developer?
Right.
With the right balance of enthusiasm and cynicism, and with the right appreciation of ethics and collaboration, all the stuff that April was talking about in the keynote this morning.
Yes.
About, empathy and compassion and all that kind of stuff. And, I think we have to accept that some of the stuff we think right now is a really good idea will turn out to be a dead end.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
we got to push it to the end anyway to see if it goes anywhere, and maybe it won't.
Yep.
So.
Yep. It's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
Really. And I think you pointed out something just now. Coding is relatively easy. I mean, it really is. The hard parts are the people parts.
It's
when you're working with a team.
You get to sit down, you get a nice chair, you get a nice screen, you can drink coffee while you're working, there's no dangerous chemicals, you're probably not going to get cancer, nothing heavy is going to fall on you, you're not going to ruin your back, and you get to get it wrong again and again and again in private, and you don't have to show anyone until you get it right.
Yes.
And then you have to, collaborate and interact with other humans, and you're like, oh no, hang on, I need to do the meeting again, I screwed it up.
Yep.
You don't get to do the meeting again. That's forever now. That's like on the blockchain, and you're like, no, we need to roll back. And yeah, I think that's what's. So I learned recently. I do some training courses about communication for developers.
Right.
One of the things I learned, the phrase "soft skills," came from the United States military in the 1960s. And
really?
anything that didn't involve a gun was considered soft skills.
Oh, wow.
So the hard skills were how to kill people with a tank, how to kill people with an airplane, how to kill people with a boat, and then the soft skills was everything else.
That's a different perspective.
And you're like, okay, so maybe we shouldn't be using these words at all anymore.
Interesting. That happens a lot. You find the history of a particular word or phrase, and you're like shocked. That's funny.
Oh, etymology is fascinating. So.
Yes. Well, you have a talk.
I do.
You're going to be giving.
I'm speaking this afternoon about WhatsApp, Web3, and Wordle.
Okay.
I like the 3-letter alliteration. So I had a talk called Apps, Algorithms, and Abstractions, and I go on called Friends, Facts, and FaceTime. And kind of in the back of my head is someone going, can you do 26 talks for each letter of the alphabet? And the title always comes towards the end. Like, I figure out what I want to talk about. And this one it's a talk I've given a couple of times before, but it's one of those talks that every time I see the news, it suddenly kind of becomes more relevant. And like when Elon Musk bought Twitter in November last year, and a lot of people were like, this is horrible. And then we saw what he was doing as the CEO of Twitter, and it's like, this is, what do we do here?
Right.
And it's the whole, how does a tool that has become that important, how does a billionaire buy it and wreck it? Like, this is not what the internet was designed for.
We're getting a first-hand show on how that happens.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's a talk about, collaboration and protocols over platforms. And, this idea that we've invented, HTTP. I have a server, you have a client. We should be able to talk to each other. And the problem is no one gets rich. And people who want to be rich hate it when nobody can get rich.
Right.
And so they're like, we got to get rich. And, the number of projects that I've seen where the core product you could run on a Raspberry Pi with an SD card, because it's really just static content. But then someone's like, well, we need to be able to track our users. So they add user tracking, and now suddenly you have dynamic content, and you have request tracking, and you have metrics, you have analytics. And then they're like, now we need to sell that, and then you bring advertising, and suddenly it's like, now we need a server farm and a team of 15 people managing it. And they're not managing the product. They're managing all the cruft that has been added to what was a relatively simple proposition. One of the things that I talk about in the talk this afternoon is Wordle. And Wordle is it's a wonderful example of, it's about 200 kilobytes, the whole game, including 7 years worth of words. So you can download Wordle to your phone once and play it for 7 years, but nobody makes any money. And I did the numbers, and I worked out that if everyone on the planet played Wordle, it would cost you about $150,000 to host it and provide that much bandwidth to all those people.
Wow.
But now the New York Times owns it. And so now when you got to play Wordle, it's like, hey, do you want to register? And you're like, no. I want to solve my puzzle and get on with my day.
Right.
And that is just such a beautiful demonstration of how, the web, it makes it possible, if you are prepared to incur a small loss personally. I have a bunch of websites that are stupid. They're just fun, silly little things. And added up, they probably cost me, 100, 200 euros a year, which is fine. I can afford that, and I like putting nice things in the world. And I have very little appetite for trying to turn those into a business with any kind of revenue stream. And so because I'm comfortable subsidizing them a little bit, it's fine. If I had to make them break even, I'd have a problem, because it's almost impossible to build a website that makes $200 a year.
Right.
You can make a website that costs $200 a year, or you can make one that, if you're lucky, it makes 200,000. But that kind of middle ground, it's the economics don't work. And so either things have to be given away for free, as in beer, or they need to be, well, now we need all the infrastructure that's necessary to get plugged into advertising and payment, and, well, we need a payment provider, and we need a MasterCard, and we need this, and what do you mean we need to register for Argentinian sales tax? Is that even a thing? Oh, I guess we do, because somebody in Argentina bought a subscription, and now, and it just really quickly gets very, very complicated.
Yeah, I can imagine. I didn't think about that, how quickly projects become complex like this.
Yeah.
And all the reasons behind it are interesting, navigating that. Well, this is not your first time at JFrog, guys.
It's not.
So your second?
Second.
Second time? You plan on coming back? Because we would love to have you here.
As long as they'll have me. So I do this thing every year where I look at all the conferences, and I'm like, I want to go to all of them again. And then I look at all the ones I've not been to, and I want to go to all of these ones too.
Yes.
And, it's this, I think the dilemma of anybody who enjoys these kind of events is you generally, I think as humans we tend to remember the positive.
Yes.
So even if you had one where you were jet lagged and, stressed and maybe everything didn't go according to plan, afterwards you remember the nice parts, and then you're like, next year I want to go back.
Yeah.
I have a couple of little kind of, I did a conference in Tel Aviv, Israel, a few years ago, which was amazing. But because of some late logistical problem with the venue, we were an hour away. There was an hour's cab ride between the hotel and the conference venue. And so I spent most of that trip in traffic.
Oh,
And so
wow.
now I'm like, yes, that one I'd definitely go back to, but the hotel and the conference need to be in the same place, and that needs to be on the beach. So that's my kind of one caveat. But no, I'd love to come back. You know, JFocus is a. I mean, look at this, the atmosphere. You folks on the stream can't see it, but we got some folks that are in here enjoying lunch, and there's a couple of thousand developers over the back, and there's the expos, and the lineup of sessions this year. You know, even as somebody who doesn't work on Java as my main stack, the combination, you know, machine learning, deep fake. I just watched Venkat Subramaniam doing his session about JavaScript.
Nice.
And yeah, it's an awesome lineup.
Yeah.
And Stockholm is a wonderful city. Really
Beautiful.
is.
Beautiful city. If you haven't visited, you should. It is incredible here. Yes, I'm enjoying listening to all the conversations, all the side conversations between developers. I think it's just so important to share our experiences in order to advance our careers, learn more. We learn more from each other.
Yeah.
Even as speakers, I've learned a lot from you already. We just push ourselves to another level of excellence, and that helps us be better educators for everyone else as well.
I hope so.
Well, I'm looking forward to your talk.
So am I. I like this talk. It's a fun one to give.
Very cool.
So,
I assume you'll have, slides and stuff to share with the audience.
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, there you have it. Here we are, JFocus 2023 with Dylan Beattie once again. Amazing to have you, sir. Thanks for talking with me.
It's been my great pleasure. Thank you.